In a society where compassion, empathy, and kindness are seen as important values, the idea of not always being gentle with others can seem confusing or even contradictory. But Buddhism offers a deeper and more thoughtful understanding of this idea. Gautama Buddha, the wise and awakened teacher who founded Buddhism over 2,000 years ago, shared teachings that go far beyond basic politeness. His wisdom touches the core of human relationships and helps us move toward inner peace and spiritual growth. In this video, we will explore the deeper side of Buddha's teachings and understand why, in some situations, gentleness alone is not enough, and why we must learn a more balanced and mindful way of dealing with the world. When Gautama was 29 years old, he began a powerful inner journey, searching for answers to life's most important questions. What causes human suffering, and how can we experience lasting joy and inner stillness? After years of meditation, reflection, and disciplined practice, Siddhartha finally found his answer beneath the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, India. In that moment of awakening, he became the Buddha, the awakened one, and dedicated the rest of his life to sharing the wisdom he had discovered. His insights are preserved in two essential teachings: the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. These timeless frameworks form the heart of Buddhist philosophy, offering practical guidance for navigating the struggles and uncertainties of life. The Four Noble Truths in particular help us understand the nature of suffering and show us a path toward liberation, and they also shed light on why being endlessly gentle is not always the most skillful approach. 1. The truth of suffering. The first noble truth recognizes a simple but profound reality. Suffering is a part of human life. We all experience discomfort, emotional pain, disappointment, and the constant restlessness that arises from desire and dissatisfaction. Being kind and gentle toward others can bring comfort, yes, but it doesn't address the deepest roots of suffering. Buddhism teaches that true freedom comes not from avoiding pain or pleasing everyone, but from understanding the mind, seeing reality clearly, and responding with wisdom. Gautama Buddha encourages us not to avoid or soften this truth, but to face suffering directly and honestly. By recognizing its place in our lives, we gain deeper understanding and insight, which helps us find meaningful solutions and eventually rise above suffering's hold. 2. The truth of the cause of suffering. The second noble truth explains where suffering comes from, pointing to our cravings and attachments as the main source. Human beings naturally move toward pleasure and pull away from discomfort. But this strong urge to hold on to pleasant experiences and avoid anything painful creates a continuous cycle of suffering. Sometimes, being overly gentle or trying to please everyone may also come from our own attachments, like wanting approval, fearing rejection, or needing to be seen in a good way. According to the Buddha, true freedom comes from loosening these attachments. This doesn't mean we must shut down emotionally or become cold. Instead, it means developing a steady, compassionate mindset that isn't controlled by the desire for external approval. 3. The cessation of suffering. The third noble truth brings a message of deep hope. Suffering can be ended. It is not an eternal or unchangeable state. By letting go of the underlying causes, our clinging, our cravings, and the emotional dependence on others' opinions, we open ourselves to the possibility of genuine peace. When we no longer chase constant approval or try to please everyone at the expense of our own well-being, we step off the treadmill of suffering. In this space of inner freedom, we begin to experience a more authentic and lasting sense of contentment. 4. The truth of the path to the cessation of the suffering. The fourth noble truth introduces the Eightfold Path, a comprehensive guide to freeing oneself from suffering and achieving liberation. This path encompasses three essential areas: ethical behavior, mental cultivation, and the development of wisdom. Although being consistently kind and gentle toward everyone may appear to be a commendable trait, the Eightfold Path invites us to develop clarity and discernment in our actions and relationships. The Eightfold Path is composed of 8 interconnected practices: right understanding and right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. These principles are designed to help individuals live in alignment with truth and balance. A central idea within this framework is the concept of the middle way, a key Buddhist teaching that emphasizes balance and the avoidance of extremes. In the context of interpersonal relationships, especially when considering whether to be gentle with others, the middle way encourages a thoughtful balance between kindness and wisdom. Gautama Buddha's own life serves as a profound illustration of this. Before reaching enlightenment, he lived in the lap of luxury as a prince, indulging in every comfort. Later, he subjected himself to severe ascetic practices, denying the body in the hope of spiritual gain. Neither extreme led him to the peace he sought. Only when he adopted the middle way, a path of balance between indulgence and denial, did he achieve true awakening. Applying this wisdom in our daily lives means recognizing when gentleness might become counterproductive. Being overly soft or accommodating can sometimes enable destructive behavior, while being too severe can cause unnecessary pain. The middle way teaches us to engage with others using discernment, knowing when to show compassion and when to establish healthy limits. This distinction is essential when considering the deeper meaning of compassion in Buddhism. True compassion does not involve permitting harmful behavior or neglecting one's own needs to keep others comfortable. Instead, it is rooted in a profound understanding of suffering, its causes and its remedies, and a dedication to relieving that suffering through wise and skillful action. Compassion in this light becomes a dynamic, intentional practice that may sometimes require firmness, honesty, or setting boundaries, not just softness or indulgence. There is a parable about a raft that offers a powerful metaphor that sheds light on the idea that gentleness is not always the appropriate response in every situation. This well-known Buddhist story emphasizes the temporary and functional nature of the Buddha's teachings, and it illustrates the importance of knowing when to release what is no longer needed. In the story, a man needs to cross a wide and dangerous river. To do so, he constructs a simple raft from whatever materials are available. The raft serves its purpose, carrying him safely across to the opposite shore. Once he reaches the far bank, he wisely chooses not to carry the raft on his back for the rest of his journey. He understands that the raft was a necessary aid to get him across, but it is no longer useful now that its purpose has been fulfilled. This parable teaches us that the teachings of Buddhism, much like the raft, are practical tools meant to help us move through suffering and ignorance. They are not sacred objects to be clung to beyond their utility. In the same way, our tendency to be consistently gentle and kind should also be examined through this lens of adaptability. There are times when showing compassion and softness is exactly what is needed. Like the raft, it provides support and comfort to those struggling to stay afloat in difficult times. However, there are also circumstances where persistent gentleness becomes counterproductive, even enabling harmful patterns in ourselves or others. In those moments, holding on to gentleness for its own sake can become a barrier to growth and freedom. The parable reminds us that just as we must know when to set the raft down, we must also recognize when to shift our approach from gentle support to wise firmness or clear boundaries. Ultimately, the path to liberation requires flexibility and insight. We must develop the ability to read each situation carefully and respond with appropriate wisdom. True compassion does not always look like softness. It sometimes demands strength, honesty, and the courage to let go of behaviors or attitudes that no longer serve a higher purpose. The parable of the mustard seed, a reflection on suffering. The parable of the mustard seed centers around a heartbroken mother who has recently lost her child, consumed by sorrow and desperate for relief. She turns to the Buddha in hopes that he might bring her child back or ease her unbearable grief. The Buddha listens compassionately and agrees to offer his help, but with a specific condition. She must find a single mustard seed from a household that has never experienced the loss of a loved one. Motivated by hope and determined to fulfill the Buddha's request, the woman goes from one home to another asking if they have ever known death. As she speaks with family after family, she comes to the painful realization that every household has endured loss in some form. Death and grief are not isolated to her alone. They are shared experiences that touch every life. After this journey, she returns to the Buddha no longer expecting a miracle, but with a deepened awareness that suffering is a universal aspect of human existence. This parable delivers a powerful message. Pain, loss, and mourning are inseparable from life. No one escapes sorrow, and every human being, regardless of status or circumstance, must eventually face the reality of suffering. When viewed through the lens of not always being gentle with others, this story reveals that kindness, while comforting, may not be enough to guide someone through the profound challenges of life. While gentleness can offer momentary relief or soothe emotional distress, it does not resolve the underlying truths that shape the human journey. Instead, what truly transforms suffering is wisdom, the type of insight that the Buddha shared through this lesson. In this context, the parable shows us that offering only gentle words or soft reassurances can sometimes fall short of what is truly needed. True compassion sometimes involves guiding others toward difficult truths rather than shielding them from pain. Through understanding the shared nature of suffering, individuals can move toward acceptance, inner peace, and spiritual growth. The teachings of Buddhism, therefore, point us toward the enduring value of insight, reminding us that while gentleness has its place, it is the clarity and depth of wisdom that ultimately lead to liberation from suffering. Applying the middle way in everyday life, one creating and honoring boundaries. An essential aspect of practicing the middle way lies in learning how to set healthy boundaries. While kindness, empathy, and flexibility are important qualities, it is equally vital to safeguard our emotional and mental well-being. In the context of Buddhism, establishing boundaries is not viewed as an absence of compassion, but rather as a wise and caring act, both for ourselves and for those we interact with. Boundaries help to create respectful relationships, preventing emotional depletion and fostering mutual understanding. 2. Responding to destructive behavior. When confronted with actions or patterns that are harmful, the middle way invites us to respond with both clarity and compassion. This might mean directly addressing the issue, encouraging the person toward healthier behavior, or seeking help from professionals if the situation demands it. The aim is to steer clear of both extremes, responding with unnecessary severity or, on the other hand, ignoring the issue entirely and allowing it to persist. By maintaining a balanced approach, we can work towards solutions that are both ethical and effective. 3. Handling disagreements and tension. Disputes and misunderstandings are an inevitable part of relationships and communication. According to the middle way, the goal is not to deny or suppress these conflicts, but to face them with awareness and thoughtful action. Rather than shying away from confrontation in the name of keeping the peace, We are encouraged to participate in open, respectful conversations. This involves practicing mindful speech, truly listening to others and being open to different perspectives. Through this approach, we aim to move beyond superficial calm and instead nurture deeper, more authentic harmony grounded in mutual respect and understanding. The practice of skillful means. In Buddhist philosophy, the concept of skillful means, upaya, plays a vital role in helping individuals progress on their path to awakening. It refers to the thoughtful use of methods and actions that are best suited to the specific circumstances, temperament and needs of each person. In the context of choosing not to be gentle with everyone, skillful means become an essential tool for offering compassionate, effective, and context-sensitive guidance. 1. Adapting compassion to the situation. Choosing not to be consistently gentle doesn't imply being harsh, cold, or unkind. Rather, it calls for a refined sense of awareness and sensitivity to what a person genuinely needs in any given moment. True compassion is not one size fits all. It must be flexible and responsive. Through the use of skillful means, we can adjust our behavior and responses to strike the appropriate balance between kindness, direction, and necessary boundaries. 2. Understanding personal differences. Every individual walks a unique path shaped by their experiences, beliefs, and emotional landscape. Some people flourish when approached with gentleness and empathy, while others might require more directness or structured guidance to truly grow. Practicing skillful means recognizing these differences and shaping our interactions in ways that support the other person's journey without assuming that the same method suits everyone equally. 3. Practicing deep listening and empathy. At the heart of skillful means lies the ability to listen attentively and empathetically. By being fully present and tuning into the emotional and psychological needs of those we engage with, we can respond with wisdom that resonates deeply. This approach allows us to provide real, thoughtful support, helping others in a way that is both compassionate and grounded without sacrificing our own clarity, energy, or emotional health. 4. Embracing the truth of impermanence. The idea of impermanence is one of the core teachings in Buddhism. It reminds us that everything in life, including our feelings, attachments, and relationships, is always changing. Understanding this truth becomes especially important when we think about the idea of not always being gentle with everyone. 1. Emotional shifts are natural. Our emotions are always moving, shaped by what happens around us and what we feel inside. If we react with constant softness or constant strictness based only on temporary emotions, it can create imbalance in our relationships. By accepting the changing nature of our feelings, we can respond to situations with steadiness and understanding instead of reacting quickly and impulsively. 2. Change within relationships. No relationship stays exactly the same. People grow, situations change, and the connections we have with others shift over time. When we understand this impermanence, we learn to value the present moment without holding on to a fixed idea of how a relationship should be. It teaches us to adjust, appreciate, and let go when needed, without resistance. 3. Handling disagreements. The power of letting go. One of the deepest teachings of impermanence is learning to loosen our grip on expectations, on control, and even on rigid ideals like believing we must always be gentle. When we cling too tightly to any fixed way of being, we unintentionally limit our own growth and the growth of those around us. Wisdom grows through flexibility. When we stop forcing life to match our ideals and instead allow each moment to unfold naturally, our actions become more in harmony with what the situation truly needs. At the core of Buddhist practice lies mindfulness and compassion toward the self. Mindfulness helps us return to the present moment without judgment, while self-compassion allows us to meet our experiences with warmth and understanding, especially when we choose not to default to constant softness. 1. Embracing kindness toward ourselves. Buddhism invites us to approach our inner world with patience and care. As we seek balance, avoiding both over-gentleness and neglect, we must remember to tend to our own emotional needs. When we treat ourselves compassionately, we act from stability and clarity. This protects us from burnout, from resentment, and from the pressure to maintain an appearance of being endlessly calm. 2. Watching without reacting. Non-judgmental awareness teaches us to observe our thoughts and emotions without getting swept away by them. Instead of reacting on impulse, we learn to pause, breathe, and understand what is truly unfolding within us. This simple space between feeling and action gives us the freedom to choose how we respond, whether that response is gentleness, firmness, or quiet stillness. When we encounter difficulties or challenging people, mindfulness becomes our inner anchor. It allows us to pause, notice our immediate reactions, and choose a response that is wiser and more intentional. In that small space between reaction and action, true compassion and understanding are born. 3. Cultivating inner balance. Equanimity, one of the 4 Brahma Viharas, is the ability to remain steady in the midst of life's constant changes. It provides a calm presence that nurtures both insight and compassion, especially in situations where being overly gentle may not support real understanding or growth. When we develop equanimity, we learn to hold steady even when emotions rise sharply, whether they come from within us or are brought in by others. In the context of not always being gentle, equanimity teaches us an important truth. We can be compassionate without being passive, firm without being harsh, and present without being overwhelmed. And so, choosing not to be gentle in every situation should never become an excuse for coldness or cruelty. Instead, it invites us to embody a deeper form of compassion, one grounded in clarity, awareness, and genuine care for the well-being of all beings. As we walk the middle way, we reflect the timeless wisdom of the Buddha. We learn to bring more harmony, understanding, and balance into our relationships and into the world around us. Ultimately, it is the graceful blend of kindness and discernment that reveals the heart of true compassion, a compassion not ruled by fleeting emotions, but guided by wisdom. This is the kind of compassion that brings lasting peace, both for ourselves and for others. Today, we explored a perspective on compassion that often goes unspoken, the understanding that true kindness doesn't always look soft. As the Buddha's teachings remind us, real compassion is rooted in wisdom, balance, and discernment. It's about recognizing when gentleness is needed and when strength, clarity, and honest boundaries are the greater forms of love. The middle way guides us to embrace both sides. Whether we're setting healthy limits, releasing unhealthy attachments, or offering guidance with insight, Buddhism shows us that love is strongest when it is paired with wisdom. If this reflection gave you something meaningful to think about, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. And always remember, compassion isn't about pleasing everyone. It's about uplifting yourself and others with clarity, awareness, and genuine care. Until next time, stay mindful, stay kind, and stay true to your path. See you in the next video.